Okay, on to the last lecture for this arousal topic. We're going to be talking about eustress. And so, eustress is basically the level of arousal that we find most pleasant and enjoyable. So, we spent a lot of last video talking about some performance decreases when we have too much arousal, but what about when we have the perfect amount of arousal? And so this is just kind of a chart to portray finding that perfect level of arousal and that eustress. And so as we can see here, if we, and this is level of stimulation on the x-axis and valence of affect on the y, and we see that when we don't have enough arousal, this often leads to boredom. Maybe if you're having a slow day at work or school, you're just checking the clock the whole time because you don't have enough arousal and you're just bored. Versus if you have a ton of stimulation, too much, you're looks like this kid's rock climbing or something and doesn't have a rope or whatever, so kind of freaking out. And so, yeah, obviously with eustress, we want something in between. So, music and physiological response. I'm trying to get that. Basically, the point of this is that we can use various things in our environment to help us reach the arousal that we want. And so, yeah, we use things like music to moderate our level of arousal to get that eustress. There we go. So tempo and type of music can influence things like heart rate, skin conductance, blood pressure, um, things that we've talked about in the past, such as certain systems, whatever, that are going to increase our arousal. And so really just depends what type of arousal you're looking for at the time. If you want to be really amped up, have a lot of arousal, you could go to something like this looks like maybe some type of EDM concert, versus if you're just trying to relax and you want that lower level of arousal, and you might be more inclined to listen to some classical music. Correlative variables. This is basically just kind of a fancy term for different characteristics that stimuli or things in our environment have. And these different characteristics can influence our level of arousal. And so there are three specifically that increase our level of arousal. And so those correlative variables are novelty. When something is new, we're more likely to spend time looking at it because we want to understand it. Kind of a similar idea with complexity, where oftentimes we'll also have more arousal and around complex stimuli. We also, again, want to understand these things. And then stimuli that are incongruent with what we expect will also influence arousal and increase arousal. So like, things like this and this, which are maybe not commonly seen. So they're novel to us, pretty complex, and potentially don't make a lot of sense to us. That's going to increase arousal versus if I just showed, a picture of a white screen here or something. So I think that consistently these correlative variables are underestimated. And we underestimate the importance of these variables. And so in this study here, participants were paid money to spend a weekend in one of two rooms, either a dark room or a light room. In this dark room, there was literally nothing besides, darkness and essential things needed to survive that weekend. And then in this light room, you have some amusement things like TV. You can see what's going on. You have more interesting stimulation there. And so as you can see, this y-axis is just percentage of participants. And so this blue is those who participated. So people were more likely to participate after hearing what room they would be in. So as you can see, those told they're going to be in this light room, 100% of those still decided to participate, versus only about maybe 73, 74% of those in that dark room. And then additionally, a substantial amount of those in the dark room did not, reasonably so, did not complete the weekend in that room. And I mean, a few in this room didn't complete it, but relatively a much less of a decrease there between participate and complete. And so this gets at things like in prison, certain prisons, they have punishments like solitary confinement. And there's a pretty big debate on whether using solitary confinement as a punishment is okay, because it really does seem like, again, those stimuli characteristics of qualitative variables are underestimated. And so when you have nothing, no one to talk to, nothing to see, the argument is that this is a form of psychological torture and shouldn't be allowed. So hedonic reversal, interestingly, we at times like a lot of arousal. And so why do we sometimes enjoy a lot of arousal? And we do sometimes enjoy, such as with roller coasters or horror movies, we do sometimes enjoy moderate amounts of negative affect, which might seem kind of strange. But basically, the idea is that things that at first seem negative, like going straight down on this roller coaster, doing a flip, or seeing someone run around in a scary mask with a chainsaw, things that are sometimes negative at first become enjoyable. And it's when we realize that, oh, this is not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. That is when they become enjoyable. And this whole process is what's called hedonic reversal. And so go check out this YouTube video. It's really quick. This kind of just gets at what I was talking about here. It's a kid going on his first roller coaster ride, and you can see that when he gets on the roller coaster, it's just absolutely terrified. Seems to really hate it, but then right as it ends, he's smiling, and it looks like he has a good time. And so that gets at this idea of hedonic reversal. Incongruity resolution, again, incongruity, that was that third qualitative variable that I mentioned earlier. And so new experiences are often incorporated into existing knowledge structures. These are called schemas. A quick example of this would be a child's birthday party. Let's say it's at a pizza place. Just by me bringing up that, you probably have a decent idea of what that birthday party might look like. Kids are going to come in, going to be there with some parents. They're going to eat the pizza, probably drink some soda, maybe play some games, sing happy birthday, things like that. So that's the schema that or at least I would have going into that. And if it ended up being something completely different, not like that at all, that would be a schema violation. And that creates tension, because then this goes against our schema, this goes against what we expected. And when things start to go against what we expect, we feel kind of a decrease in control of the environment. We don't like that. But where we do like incongruity is when it's resolved. So we see some positive affect when the incongruent situation, when a resolution is possible there. And so when that maybe does fit into an existing schema, it just takes a bit longer to figure that out. Then again, we'll feel more control. We're going to feel better about that. And therefore, we'll feel feelings of pleasure and more optimal levels of arousal. And so I think there are a decent amount of examples with this, such as movies and music, which we'll talk about in the next couple slides, but also jokes. This is often kind of the baseline for jokes in general, is incongruity resolution. So with jokes, oftentimes in the beginning, the comedian or whoever it is setting up a certain expectation and then violates it. but then with the punchline makes it understandable, makes it so that you kind of go, oh, that makes sense now. Oftentimes that brings out laughter and whatever it might be. I think the um, book has an example of that. So, better to be surprised. So let's see here. Yeah, so a lot of stories, books, movies rely on these incongruent surprises. They kind of set up a scenario where you think something's going to happen and then something completely different happens. Like in a lot of these movies, Darth Vader being Luke's father, Snape killing Dumbledore, things like that. A lot of these stories set up unexpected events where then we see an answer that we didn't expect, and we do seem to some extent like that surprise. Interestingly, though, I thought this was interesting. I really did not expect these results. This is a study testing movies, and they have participants watch these movies before and after, or either the participants will either watch the movies when that movie has been spoiled for them or when the movie hasn't been spoiled. And you would expect, hedonic ratings, just kind of pleasure from the movie. You would expect, or at least I expected, pleasure to be a lot higher in the unspoiled conditions, and you really don't see that. There's really not any large differences here. You see, error bars here pretty much for the most part start to match up. And so, yeah, I thought that was pretty unexpected, that spoilers don't seem to have as much of an impact on whether or not people enjoy the movie as we expect. And so, what does that mean? That means at least we can hypothesize that likely the aspect of this incongruency in movies and books that we like is finding out the answer. That's the part that we like, not necessarily being in the moments of suspense, but afterwards when we get that answer. Music here. So typically with music, there's almost always a pattern or a melody with some slight, changes as you go in pitch and or tone, but oftentimes things return to that original pattern and melody throughout the song, and lyrics oftentimes are rhyming throughout. And so, in other words, music is seldom completely random. We usually have some expectation of what that song is going to be like, what the pattern is going to be throughout, with some deviation in there and things like pitch and tone. And again, so yeah, there are certain themes, reprisals that we come to expect. An example of that is the blues. So there's a very kind of basic structure that most blues songs are going to have. So if you know you're going to listen to a blues song, kind of know what to expect, but there's still room for improvisation and deviations from that. And so just watch the first minute of this video that kind of gets at that. Just a little clip of blues. If you're liking the music, feel free to definitely watch the whole thing. But just watch the first, for this purpose of this class, watch the first 30 seconds to a minute to kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. And so the basic notion or theme here with music in general is that we do enjoy slight deviations, but that's to an extent. When we start to get a lot of deviations, we like that less and less after a while, and when it starts to become completely just random sounds, we oftentimes won't like that as much. And so that is it. That's all on arousal. Hope you kept up, or were at least thinking about that activity as you were watching these. And yeah, make sure to fill that out, turn it in, and we will move on to the third topic of this week, which is going to be emotion and mood.